This is Robert Morris from PROPO America, and today we'll cover how to remove and reinstall a gear set for an RSx Response servo. Step one, we're going to go ahead and remove the bottom case of the servo. We need to remove the 4 screws here. Those 4 screws loosened. Back plate just pulls right, or back bottom case of the servo pulls right off and removed. Next, what we want to do is go to the upper case. There are 2 screws in the upper case that need to be removed. In order to remove these 2 screws, you need a Phillips screwdriver 0 in order to get in there. Anything larger probably won't fit. You might end up stripping out the screw head, so let's go ahead and remove these 2 screws here, or loosen them. Those 2 screws removed. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the upper case. Place your thumb on the final gear, 2 other fingers on the tabs of the upper case, and just pull away from the case. Pops right off. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and inspect the upper case to make sure that the gear pin holes are not damaged and oblong. Make sure they're still nice and round. This looks okay. Place that to the side. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and remove the gear set that's in the servo. So what we want to do is go ahead and remove the 3rd gear first, and in order to do that we need to pull the pin. So the 3rd gear is actually this gear here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this pin up. Once the pin is up, the 3rd gear slides right out. Next, we want to go ahead and remove the 2nd gear. That pulls right up. Go ahead and remove the 1st gear. Right out. And to remove the final gear, what you need to do is just go ahead and walk it back and forth, and it pulls right up. Next, we're going to go ahead and clean the gears. Just wipe them down, inspect them, make sure that there's no damage to the gear teeth. Make sure they're all nice, not sharp. If they're sharp, it means that there's got a little excessive wear. You get a little more backlash. The servo might not center correctly. Just wipe them down, inspect them, make sure they're nice and neat, no damage. All these gears look to be good. Next, you want to go ahead and check this final gear insert. Make sure it's not damaged, that it's properly moving on the potentiometer. So, in order to start the servo gear replacement, what we want to do is make sure that this is set at this angle here where it's nice and straight. The brass piece is straight. See the black lines here on the insert. Make sure it's 90 degrees from the potentiometer, and that will line up correctly with the final gear once it's installed. You're going to make sure this slides on, and you'll feel it slide right into the grooves. Make sure you got proper movement and that the gear is properly seated down. Next, we'll go ahead and replace the 1st gear back into the servo. That just drops right in. Next will be the 2nd gear. Make sure that lines up with the 1st gear. And then we want to go ahead and put in the 3rd gear. And it's just basically the reverse order of the removal when you're installing it. Next, you want to make sure that once the 3rd gear is in, apply a little pressure onto the pin and move the 1st gear around until that pin slides in. Once everything's centered up, the gear will drop all the way back down in. Next, we want to go ahead and put some gear grease, and just want to put a little bit. You don't want to put too much. Too much grease can bind up the gears. A little goes a long way with these servos. So I just a couple drops on the teeth. Make sure everything's in there. Next, we want to go ahead and put the upper case back on. Just slides in, goes back on. Check to make sure that there is no binding in the servo. Everything is good. Go ahead and start putting the screws back in. So we'll start with the two uppercase screws. Uppercase is on. Flip it back over. Now for the bottom case, make sure that the O-ring is properly seated into the middle case there. Go ahead and slide the bottom case back on. Pressing it down. I'm going to go ahead and tighten the screws in a diagonal formation here. First, you want to start here. Apply even pressure all the way across the case to make sure that you don't pinch any of the gears. Now, when I disassembled the servo, I used the electric handheld drill. And the reason being is that it's a little quicker to remove the screws. Don't really want to use an electric drill to put the screws back in because you might over torque everything. So I like to do everything by hand to make sure that you don't over torque and damage possibly the bottom case or the upper case or pinch the gears. And just lets you fine tune it a little more so that you don't damage anything. Takes a little longer, but in the long run, save you some money. Once the screws are all properly tightened for the case, one last check to make sure that the gears are not binding and everything is moving nice and smooth. Disassemble and reassemble gear set in RSx Servo.